school minefields is gentle and timeless. So we're so excited to be celebrating her follow-up to Nat Enough, which is a brand new graphic novel, Forget Me Nat, and it released on September 1st. And with Maria tonight is Jerry Kraft, and Jerry is the New York Times bestselling author and illustrator of the graphic novels New Kid and the soon-to-be released Class Act. New Kid is the winner of the 2020 John Newbery Medal for the most outstanding contribution to children's literature and the Kirkus Prize for Young Readers Literature. And he was also awarded the Coretta Scott King Author Award for the most outstanding work by an African-American writer. Jerry is the creator of Mama's Boys, an award-winning syndicated comic strip. He's won 5 African-American literary awards, and he is co-founder of the Schomburg Center's annual Black Comic Book Festival. So if you haven't read New Kid yet, you should. Book List said it was possibly one of the most important graphic novels of the year when it came out. New York Times Book Review said, New Kid is at once tender and tough, funny and heartbreaking. Hand this to the middle grade reader in your life right away. So at this point, I am going to spotlight our 2 guests and let them chit chat about Maria's work as we celebrate Forget Me Nat. And I'm going to unmute Maria. And I'm going to unmute Jerry. And let us spotlight Jerry.
Okay.
And spotlight Maria. You guys are all set.
All right. Thank you, Janet. Maria, you there?
Yeah, I can't see myself big screen. Can you?
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I can't see it, but I believe you. I can see
Yes.
myself small screen, which is fine because I
No.
don't. I'd rather look at you than me. So that's
I see you're on my 22-inch screen. All 22 inches is you.
Okay,
So you're
great.
good. So now I was going to start by saying, tell us about yourself, but you had a very nice introduction from Janet. So do you want to add anything to that, or should we go straight into your books?
Well, just a little bit about the comic, which is about to celebrate its 7th birthday on 13th of September. So I've been doing the daily comic for 7 years now, and it's in newspapers nationwide and on Go Comics. And I have a couple of examples. Maybe we can show a couple of the slides, Janet, of the comic.
And what's it called?
Half Full. Oh, I
Okay,
left that
there
part
you
out.
go.
And similar to my books, I kind of have it's half full as a tongue-in-cheek way of having sort of a positive outlook on the crazy stuff that we all go through in life. So there's one with some ghosts and a dryer, which I think is on the next slide there.
So, you know,
exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. So I like to do silly stuff. So this is about, for Halloween, ghosts taking a ride in the dryer. And then on the next page, one thing that a lot of cartoonists and I have been talking about right now is we get a lot of, first question everybody asks is, where do you get your ideas? So I and a lot of other cartoonists get our ideas by moving around through life, but we haven't been able to really move around through life very effectively. So can we just go back one slide real quick? So this Catwoman at home, I've been doing a lot of comics about working at home, Zoom calls. So I sort of like end up writing what's around me. And then on the next slide, I've done one with a Zoom call where this Mr. Potato Head is actually just messing around on his phone while he's on a Zoom call. So, and then I also do a bunch of greeting cards. I have a slide of a little bit of a collection of them. And a lot of these are based on my comic. So I've been doing these for about 7 years as well. And these are a lot of fun. And I write the sentiment inside the card as well. So I have a really good time with these.
So I mean, I always find your comics of Laugh Out Loud funny. Some of them are like, oh man, she got me on that.
I'm glad to hear that.
But what kind of schedule is that for you?
It's intense. It's about an 8-day-a-week schedule, like the Beatles said. And it literally 7 days a week. It's funny, when I first started the comics 7 years ago, I got picked up by Go Comics before I got put in the newspaper. And I thought at the time, Go Comics was flexible. They said you could do one a week, 4 a week, whatever. But I knew I wanted to be syndicated in the newspaper. So at the time, it was this giant stretch for me to do 7 comics a week, just massive. And I was like, how am I ever going to do this? Fast forward 7 years, and I pretty much do all 7 in a day to a day and a half. And now that includes me writing, and I'm writing constantly. So as I'm walking through life, I'm either jotting stuff down, or I tell Siri and my phone, take a note, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. One time I looked through my notes and I saw a note that I've kept forever: claustrophobic tomato. That's not what I said. I don't know what I meant, but that wasn't the comic. But it's kind of funny to, sometimes I've gotten comics out of Siri messing up. But yes, it's kind of an ongoing thing. I mean, if I hand in a round of edits and I'm waiting for edits to come back, then I've got a little extra time to do more on my comic, and I'll kind of get myself a couple weeks ahead. But it's rigorous. I mean, there was a point in time before the books where I'd be 3-4 months out on my comic, which was great. But when the books came along, it got truncated a little bit. So I'm about a month out now on comics. So.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things where people ask me for where I get ideas from, and it really is going out and seeing stuff, because you can be online in Costco and someone in front of you does something and like, oh, that's a good comic strip,
And it's a great way to go through life. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Because I say, well, you know what? That's going to be a comic strip. I'm not even going to get upset about it. It's going to be a comic strip. And that has helped tremendously.
Yeah.
So you've got a Jim Davis connection. So Jim Davis, you want to say who he is?
I do. So Jim Davis, who wrote Garfield, this whole thing goes full circle. I've got a couple stories about it. So when I was a little kid, I was obsessed with Garfield. When I was 7 or 8, when the first Garfield books came out, I had every single Garfield book. And the main character, John Arbuckle, was a cartoonist. And that was it for me. I was like, this is it. I want to be a cartoonist. So I didn't just read Garfield. I studied it. I drew it. All I wanted to do in my life was be a cartoonist. And I have a little show and tell. A lot of the stories from Nat Enough came from my Garfield diary, which the one thing I regret about this is not keeping more entries. Because I get to a point where all of a sudden it runs out. And that's one, like, I wish I had kept more info. So fast forward to, I guess, within the last 10 years, I became a member of the National Cartoonist Society, and I had the opportunity to meet Jim Davis, which my 8-year-old brain just exploded at that point, because I couldn't believe I was meeting one of my cartoon heroes at that point. And by then I had been established as a cartoonist myself. So full circle, the dream came true. And I had another funny incident with him. I did a cartoon about clickbait for cats. So, in articles, there are clickbaits, celebrities, what do they look like now? Whatever. So I did that, what do they look like now? And I used Garfield. So somebody clipped it out of the LA Times and mails it to Jim Davis. And we had corresponded over the years. So he emails me and he said, somebody sent this to me saying it was copyright infringement, which it wasn't. Of course, it was satire. And he knew that too. And he said, do you mind if I put it on my Facebook page? So then I was like, you know what I need now? A time machine. So I can go back and tell my 8-year-old self, you're never going to believe this. Not only are you a cartoonist, but you're having this correspondence. So, and then Jim wrote a wonderful blurb for my book, which was really sweet of him. So,
like, hey, 8-year-old self, one day we're going to get a lawsuit from Jim Davis.
Right, exactly. That was it.
So do you also love lasagna and hate Mondays?
Yeah, well, no. You know what I don't like? Fridays. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because every Friday comes and another week passes and I never feel like I get enough done. No matter how much I do, which is a lot. Yep. Fridays are my worst day. Mondays I love because it's a whole new week. But I just want, I wish I could have 2 weeks in one.
Okay. Yep. So it is time for you to tell us about your books, Forget Me Nat, and its predecessor, Nat Enough.
All right. Well, I think since it's the predecessor, I'll start with Nat Enough. Okay. And I have some slides. There's a slide of Natalie wearing a bunch of hats. Maybe we can start with that.
Okay. And now, so Nat Enough came out April 7th.
That's right.
And let's see. And now the book birthday for Forget Me Nat is September 1st, huh?
That's right.
How did you get 2 books released so closely together?
Well, So before this whole lockdown thing, I started my own personal lockdown in about August of 2018. And I was doing one after the other. And then I think I handed everything in final for Nat Book 2. I think it was early February of this year. And I was all ready to get in a plane and go on a tour and go to all these places. And then the world had other plans. So I know this lockdown thing's old hat. I've been doing this for a while. So
Oh, I know.
nothing
People
new.
ask
You
me
too.
that. Oh,
I
right.
remember we had
People
these
ask me
conversations.
that, like, oh, how are you surviving the lockdown? I'm like, we're on lockdown?
Right, exactly. Like, yeah, what's different? Yeah, there's nothing
Right.
different there.
So what are we looking
That's right.
at
So this is Natalie wearing a bunch of different hats. So the story of Nat Enough is about Natalie, who doesn't think she's athletic enough or talented enough or stylish enough. And it turns out she's not even cool enough for her best friend, Lily, who dumps her on the first day of school. And a lot of Nat Enough was based on my childhood self. Here in the hat, she's trying to like kind of figure out who she is, and she's trying to figure out a way to get Lily back. And one thing she sort of discovers in the process is instead of focusing on who she isn't, to focus on who she is. And she also encounters a lot of bullies, including her ex-best friend, which not only dumps her, but bullies her. And she also gets barked at by a kid who, while she's waiting for her mom every day. But her biggest bully is really herself in the form of self-criticism and self-doubt. And she has that sort of reflected back to her with this woman in a mirror, kind of like the magic mirror, but it's really her own insecurities focused back at her.
Wow.
So at the beginning of every chapter, I've got her pets, which are Cat and Treat. And Treat the dog is based on my dog, Toby, it's his birthday today. Because Toby won't come if I yell Toby, but if I say Treat, he will come running. So I thought that would be a funny name for a character. And Cat, I have 2 cats and neither will come when I call them for anything. So I thought we'll just name the cat Cat. So each chapter starts with a little cartoon of Cat and Treat, and they interact with each other. And there's also the echoing of the bullying. Cat kind of bullies Treat a little bit. So there's a little bit of an echo of that throughout the book as well.
Got it. So, I think we may have been separated at birth because we have a lot of similarities, not only going from comic strips to graphic novels, but also, like even here, it's really important for me to do something creative with my chapter openings. And I see you do the same thing, where it's not just chapter 16, chapter 17. So I put a lot of work into my chapter headings.
Me too.
And
and yours are
so
fun. Yours are so fun with all the pop culture references too, which is really great.
And you have the cartoons, which is fun. That's a great way to start the chapters. And then the other thing that I see that we both do is basically anything can talk, like I have the cherubs in New Kid, the little angels that fly around.
That's right.
You have Cat and Treat that kind of, hey, I'm out of here, or no, I'm not staying for this, or little things that just really add to the overall humor and the commentary of the book.
Exactly. And the puppet that you have as well. It's fun. It gives a whole other layer.
Absolutely. So, I'm a big horror movie fan.
Yeah.
But, to me, the scarier the better. But nothing terrifies me more than reading about little girls in middle school.
I hear you.
Oh my God, was it really that tough?
It really is. It's a different thing. It's hard to explain. It's really hard. And I think that idea of fitting in gets amplified to a place because there's so many details to it. And I never had the right thing. I didn't have the right jeans. I remember getting this jacket. Everybody had this jacket and I finally got one, but mine was a zip up and everybody else's was a pullover. So it was like, no matter what I did, I didn't do it right. Like everybody had a little Snoopy doll. I got the big one, but then I couldn't share clothes with anybody. So it's like, I always did it wrong. And then it took till like being an adult, realizing that actually not fitting in is a great thing. But at the time, it's really hard. So I think it was really incredibly healing for me to do Not Enough, because like I said, so much of it was from my own childhood. Actually, if we can hop forward 2 screens, there's a bird, there's a drawing of a bird. Yeah, like the Da Vinci bird here. So I think what's interesting for me was, although I based Natalie on my childhood self, at a certain point, she sort of took on a life of her own and then really became this incredible teacher for me, as did the supporting characters. And the supporting characters are sort of an amalgam of personalities. It's not any one specific person. I think her best friend Zoe is a lot of qualities of some of my closest friends and other personalities that I've met. But this picture, this picture serves as proof as how much I brought from childhood. When we go to the next screen here, and some things you just can't make up. So this bird costume was real. I made the wings and my mom sewed every single feather on that leotard. And I also got plucked. And it was really fun to kind of like go back on this like archaeological soul dig and pull up real feelings and experiences from childhood and kind of look at them in a different way. And also to apply humor to it, much like you were saying about standing in line at Costco, right? When you can go back and then apply humor, it kind of reframes all these things. And then hopefully we'll help kids see it in a new light.
Just to reiterate, that is not Photoshop. That is a real photograph.
That's real. Yeah, that was long before Photoshop even existed, and I didn't re-Photoshop it now. And I don't know, there was a little trail of yellow feathers behind me everywhere. Yeah, and I don't even know. And I remember once again, it was like I wanted to be in the play, but I didn't make it to the play because I couldn't sing, much like Natalie. So I ended up becoming a backup bird parrot or something, and so I went with it. I was like, all right.
Wow.
This is it.
So self-acceptance is another big theme in both of our books.
Exactly.
Mine was Jordan just trying not to fit in because he didn't fit into either of the two worlds, the private school world or really around his book. So you want to talk a little bit about self-acceptance and how you show that throughout?
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point about what you were saying about your book, about not fitting in both worlds. And I think for Natalie, she was trying so hard to get Lily back. She was trying so hard to be like the cool kids that Lily wanted to be with. And it really took her to kind of be, the message that I learned from her was this idea of being more of who you are. So instead of going out there and comparing herself, well, I can't sing and I can't do this, and I'm not a good athlete. She kind of said, well, what can I do? Who am I? What do I do? And it turns out, just like your book, she loved to write and she loved to draw. And very similar to your book, she kind of expressed herself and worked through her feelings in her sketchbook as well.
Now, since so much is based on you, what was it like for you digging up all these old feelings?
Well, like I said, I think I was surprised by many of them, but I think to go back and apply humor was this like incredibly healing process to kind of go through. And I kind of also hope in that I can help other kids who are feeling, and I've gotten so many letters about this, that I had a Lily in my life, and I think a lot of people, even though I went to school a long time ago, some of these themes are timeless, fitting in, how girls can be in middle school. It seems like that hasn't changed very much. So I think that whole feeling, I'm hoping that it helps soften how intense those feelings can be when you are in middle school.
Now, I know at least one person will ask, so do you know where that Lily is these days?
I know. I know people do have asked that question. So, and like I said, the supporting character Lily isn't a specific person. It's sort of an amalgam of personalities. So,
got it.
But yeah.
So one of our other similarities, because there are 900,
At least.
The ensemble cast, although Jordan is kind of the star, there are so many characters that kind of steal scenes and steal the show. And I feel the same way about your book.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, when you were developing it, did you feel like those characters also sort of took on a life of their own and kind of starting to do their own thing as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that cool?
Both initially the cherubs were just holding up a sign that said hallelujah when Jordan saw another black kid in his
class. Which was a great scene.
And I didn't plan to bring them back and make them supporting characters, and then I thought of another, let me use them again. And then before I knew it, they were there.
Yeah.
And Alexandra with the puppets, that was just going to be like a throwaway thing. And then I felt so bad for her being kind of picked on and stuff that I wanted to give her a backstory and prove how nice she was. And
which was great. I have to say that was really a satisfying part of your book, to hear her backstory. I thought that was really interesting.
Got it. Thank you. And now other things. So you want to show some more of your pages and what kind of comments?
Yeah, I think we're hopping over to Forget Me Nat now, so maybe I can talk a little bit about that. So Forget Me Nat picks up on the second half of 6th grade. And Natalie just went to winter break and came back and has a completely all-consuming crush on Derek. Just completely takes over everything in her life. It's all she can think about. It's all she can do. And while Not Enough was about being more of who she was, Forget Me Not's a little bit about remembering who she is, because she kind of got a little lost. So I know middle school crushes can be so epic that, you know, they can really take over. So this book's really about, you know, crushes and getting crushed, and also staying true to yourself and not trying, once again, in the way that she did sort of with Lily, trying to bend. She kind of also now tries to bend toward Derek. And another message that I think is really important too is not letting anybody else's opinion of you affect your opinion of yourself, like any external force.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, from who, from wherever. Yeah.
Right. And when we talk about a picture worth 1,000 words, so here, you know, having the avocado and the toast, you know, alive, personified, smiling, like that's always great. Showing Nat flying to show how happy she is, like, you know, all those things just really, and we both did the similar thing. We talked about when I did one when Jordan was going into the cafeteria and he's by himself. So I have him like the size of a milk carton. He's six inches tall.
Yes.
And you used that same device, and you said that came from doing comic strips when you were.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a scene a couple times, I did it in Not Enough, where she physically shrinks when something happens. She feels literally small. In this case, she's put Derek on a pedestal, so she's smaller. But there's another scene where she asks Derek to a school dance. And that I actually took from something in college, where I asked someone to a school dance and he said no. And I remember very clearly drawing a comic of what I felt like in that moment, just on loose leaf paper. And I put myself about that big on the top of a chair. And I have to find that somewhere, because it's somewhere. But I've kind of been doing this whole thing my whole life, drawing comics and also using comics to process feelings. Yeah. And really all through school, if there was a chance of, if a teacher said, we're going to do a creative essay, there was 100% chance I was doing a comic. Did you do that as well growing up?
Yeah, you know what I did? The first time that I got the real go-ahead from a teacher was, I think it was 10th grade biology. So for my term paper, my teacher actually let me do a comic book. Nice. And it was all about, you know, the leaves, and I still remember it, the xylem and the phloem system and plants and all this kind of stuff. And because I think I worked twice as hard on that as if I could just, you know, so I still remember that stuff. So it was really a big like jump off point for me, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, me too. And it's funny you say that. I remember I was in an oceanography class, and we would go down to the beach and discover things. And that was my whole project. It was a journal of everything that I found and little notes about everything. And the other one, which I have here, my little show and tell, in high school, I did a cliff notes of all the books we read or were supposed to read in AP English that I read. So I did it like sort of like a Mad Magazine goof. Like we read Othello, so of course I made it about the board game, right?
Oh,
so
funny.
And it's also written on a typewriter, by the way. So yeah, I just sort of did like each book, I did a whole thing, and also with the inanimate objects, this has sort of been part of my DNA forever. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's how I communicate, really. The words and pictures together. I think that's something that I can't really communicate without both together.
Right, absolutely. What's your creative process like?
So I start with sort of, I guess I officially start with the end of the book. Weirdly, that ends up being my sort of starting point. But I write an outline of kind of beginning, middle, and end, and the turning points and the inciting incidents, and then sort of break it down into chapters. And I rewrite that several times. But what's interesting is, by the time I'm done with the draft after draft after draft, that outline practically goes out the window. For me, it just sort of, it's like a roadmap, so I kind of know where I'm going. And then the real creating the story is a writing drawing process for me. I can't separate them. I do it together. And these books, I both kind of ended up writing them by hand in pencil. I just sort of, you know, would block it out and sort of show what was going to happen in each scene with really, really rough drawings, and then write, you know, block it out. And then it goes through revision after revision after revision. And it's funny because I realized so much of the fine art background that I had, that skill set is used in writing, because for so much of it, it's like having a lump of clay and just throwing it on the potter's wheel. And then you're just shaping and shaping and shaping. And similar to even painting, it's, you know, you cover the canvas with all this stuff, and then it's refine. So it's an interesting process. Do you write and draw when you,
Yeah, I had editors and agents telling me, "Oh, you could do it this way, where you just write the words and do this," but I literally sketch out the entire thing. So
yeah,
even with Class Act, I use one of my son's old binders, the ones that you can zip close, and then
yeah,
I could move the chapters around and do
that's
stuff.
what
But
I do.
yeah, it's all sketched out.
I have a whole notebook. I literally fill up a notebook, a binder, just like you said, so I can flip through it. And then I use sticky notes to make changes. So, because I want to see it, like you're saying, like a book. I want to see what the whole flow is, like an actual book.
We see,
Yeah, we have an awful lot in common,
we
Jerry.
were
It's really,
separated at birth. Wow.
it's true. It's crazy.
So, and then the coloring, how are you doing the coloring?
So for these two books, I actually did it by hand in watercolor,
Wow.
which was, it was intense. And that was part of that whole lockdown thing. So I would do it by hand and then I would scan it in and then do the cleanup in Photoshop and tweaking. And that was challenging for things like, her backpack is this color in this scene. And, it was yellow in the first scene, then you made it purple by the second. So I'd have to go back and fix some things. But luckily, thanks to digital, I was able to fix things.
See,
And I
I
love painting.
drew both books completely in Photoshop digital, so there's no
Yeah.
paper, no hand coloring.
Yeah, I
So
think I'll probably do that moving forward. I loved watercolor, but it does bring another set of challenges that I didn't realize until I got through it. So,
yeah. What's it like having both books so closely published?
it's amazing. I mean, and I know it's a weird year of all years to have two debut books happen in the same year. Because Not Enough was April 7th, so that was at the point where we just kind of started lockdown and nobody knew what was going on. But in a weird way, there's this cool silver lining of these virtual events has been able to let me connect with even bigger audiences. So it's kind of neat that it's all happening this way. And I think, in theory, people are reading more because they have more time on their hands.
Yeah.
So I think it all kind of worked out.
But 5 months in between releases, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was a tight schedule. It really was.
So I guess part 3 will be out, what, December?
Yeah, right. It's actually next week. So.
Right. Wow. Yeah, this is gorgeous. I love how animated she is in the face and the expressions. Nice
So
job.
this is the last day before she gets braces. And she's having some trepidation about getting braces. So she says, "It was nice knowing you smile." And actually the next scene, I had braces for 5 years as a kid, and I remember it being a tough part of my life. But in the next slide, I talk about her going to the dentist. And I always think it's funny that orthodontists and dentists, they totally know what you're saying, even though you're mumbling the whole time. They can absolutely translate that. So I had a lot of fun. Of course, I mouthed it all out when I was writing this to make sure it sounded
funny.
authentic. But yeah, that was a lot of fun to do.
So did you write them both at the same time? Like, did you know what was going to happen in Forget Me Nat when you were working on the first?
A little bit. I knew it was about crushes, but that was about it. And I have this funny thing when I'm working. I keep a thing of sticky notes next to me. So if I get an idea so as I'm working on book 1, when I got an idea for book 2, I'd write it down and then put it aside. Because when I'm on one project, I really need to focus. But and there's also this great app called, I think it's called Day One. It's sort of like a journal app, but I keep folders for other projects. So I would sort of, in the same way that I write down comics, I'd get little seeds for ideas and write them down, but I didn't write them concurrently. I really had to focus on one project at a time. But I did plant some seeds for Forget Me Nat in Nat enough to know, I knew enough to know what seeds to plant in it. So it was sort of a continuation of a story.
So you always knew that there would be a second?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I knew that book 1 and book 2 were together. So yeah.
Got it. Okay. So plans for this to be like Wimpy Kid, where we're talking 10 years from now and you're on book 15 or something like that?
Well, we'll see. I can say that book 3 is in the works. That's what I'm doing now. And I'm still on my personal lockdown and the external lockdown. Like you said before, they're all one and the same, but.
Yeah. So you actually left the house this week, which was pretty amazing.
I know, that was one of my first ventures out, which is such a weird feeling. I've been taking this, well, like I said, I mean, I had the lockdown was sort of self-imposed before anyway, but yeah, so yeah, we had a little field trip, which was fun, which was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I had so, I knew when Class Act was due, but I had a trip to China, a trip to Dubai, family trip. And when all of those got canceled, I literally stayed up till 3, 4, 5 a.m., like all of lockdown from March 16th, I think was day one. And I finished it, I did probably 6 months of work in 3 months and
Yeah.
made the deadline. And that's why Class Act is able to come out so soon. But if I had to do all that traveling, I would have been in trouble.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, I know. It's funny. There was some meme going around that something about the thing like when you find out that quarantine is the same as your regular life, which I thought
Yes.
was funny because that as all of us as authors and cartoonists, we all are like, whatever. Yeah, you
Right.
stay home for weeks and weeks on end, and you don't go to any parties and you cancel plans because it takes precedent over everything.
And especially since I found that so much of my social life now is while I'm working, I'm also talking to another illustrator who's also working, and we're just
Yes, me too.
talking on the phone and drawing. So
Yes,
I didn't realize that literally was my social life,
that's
you
mine too. We
know?
need to chat more, Jerry.
Right, right. So now it's like, hey, you can all go back outside. And like, yeah, I don't want to go back outside.
Yeah, what's out there?
Right.
Who needs out there?
So anything else that you want to kind of talk about before? Did we go through all
Yeah.
the slides and all the good
Well,
stuff?
I think, something I kind of touched on before was, about like what I want kids to get from the books. I think, when you get to middle school, it's really about fitting in. And like I said earlier, later in life, you realize that what makes you unique is what makes you amazing. And I think the other important thing for me is for kids to primarily to laugh. And in the same way that you do with your books, we kind of take heavy topics and put humor in there to
Yeah.
kind of soften it. But I think that helps get the message across even more. And I want kids to feel seen and heard. And I'm sure you've heard so much from kids with your books that they feel that they can relate to those feelings. And that's
Yeah.
one of the most important things for me.
The humor was really important, because I would not have tried to talk about nearly as much as I did if I
Yeah,
didn't have the humor.
that's right.
You
I feel
know,
the same way.
yeah, because especially, I mean, her best friend. I mean, that was tough to read. Like, hey, it's like, oh, maybe if you give me gifts every day, maybe I'll be your friend, but probably not. But without the humor to kind of balance that,
Yeah.
I really look forward to the laughs and cat and treat and the little comments and the swans. Like, she doesn't really expect us to do that. Like, that stuff
Go
is
with it.
really funny.
What's funny about the letter actually? I definitely don't have the actual letter, but the actual letter I received was way worse than that. And I put it originally in, and my editors were like, "You got to tone that down." But that's what it was. I mean, it was worse. It was somehow even
Wow.
worse, which hurt. Yeah, it was harsh. It was really harsh. And
Wow.
I think, like I said, to get bullied on top of it, and that was at a time without social media. I can only imagine now the levels that, it's an ongoing thing. It's not just in school. It can be, all the time. So it's
Yeah.
probably even harder now than it was when I was growing up.
Yeah. Terry Levinson, another one who I just love her sense of humor.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, and it just really kind of adds to the story. So you're two of my favorites, Maria.
Well, you're both of our favorites too. So
So
I'm
hi,
gonna
Janet.
pop in here. I'm going to pop in and just say it's getting close to time when we're going to take some questions. So just to remind everybody who's listening, if you want to email a question to Margie here at the Blue Bunny, it's Margie, MARGIE at bluebunnybooks.com. You can email her some questions. And I do have a few. Did you two have anything you wanted to wrap up before I jump into asking a couple of questions?
I am completely ready if you are, Maria.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, so I have one from Kelly. She says, I'm a K-4 librarian. Are these graphic novels more geared toward middle grades, or would a 3rd and 4th grade audience be appropriate?
Well, their age is 8 to 12. So I think that 3rd grade is what? 7th grade is about 2nd, 8th, 3rd. Yeah, so I think so. Yeah, and they kind of skew a little bit younger, I think, than older. Even the crush is, it's a very innocent crush. So it's a very gentle theme.
Yeah, I think with mine, I never know, you know, and until I go on Twitter and someone's like, oh, I just read this with my third graders and they loved it,
Right.
you know, and I go, oh, so then when someone says, can a third grader read, I go, yeah. So with New Kid, there's nothing bad in, but obviously as a kid gets older and they read it when they're in fifth grade, they'll get more stuff. It's like when they talk about the layers of an onion. And then if they read it again in ninth grade, they'll be like, oh, I completely missed that when I was in sixth grade. But yes, so I would say yes, but the book will grow with them. Good question.
Okay. Let's see. Maria, you may have already answered this. You're working on the third Nat book. Can you tell us what it's about and a release date? Or is that top secret?
I think it's still top secret, but it should be, let's see, release date, I believe, is fall of 2021.
Okay.
Or as Jerry said, next week.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's actually fall.
Feels like that, right? Jerry, is there any inspiration on your upcoming book, Class Act? Do you feel like Class Act will also be nominated for a Caldecott or another Newbery?
I hope so.
You know what? So here's the thing, and I want to ask you if you were a reader as a kid, Maria, because I was
yeah.
not.
Oh,
You
wow.
were?
Yes.
Really? Did you have scholastic book fairs and that kind
I
of
think
stuff?
so. Yeah, I remember, having the book fairs. And it's funny because I actually still have one of my favorite books from childhood. I have the actual original copy, and it was Patio the Lion by Shel Silverstein. And I also loved his poetry, Where the Sidewalk Ends. And but what's interesting is it turns out I loved Patio the Lion because it was about a lion who loved marshmallows. But what you were saying before about the onions, I realized later that really it was about him being more of who he was, which is kind of funny that ended up becoming a theme.
Right.
But yeah, I've loved all the Narnia books. And I guess by the time I was 13, I was reading Stephen King like crazy. So I've always,
Wow. See, I
I've always
really
loved
wasn't
reading.
a reader until I was an adult, really. Like I lived in book deserts and the library was always closed. So
Wow.
I forced myself, like I could read, I just didn't enjoy it. And when I had two sons of my own, I wanted to make sure that they were readers. And that was when I started seeing the books with the shiny medals. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like Holes and Bud Not Buddy. And I really didn't know what they were. And this was like 15 years ago. So I never aspired to win those kind of awards because I didn't know what they were. And I didn't think that, I always loved to draw, but since I wasn't a reader, I didn't necessarily consider myself a writer, and then I just started writing my own comics and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I can write too. So because I didn't look forward to, like that wasn't a dream, with Class Act, I was just so happy to make the deadline.
Yeah.
What I am, like, I can't wait for it to come out so I can talk to people about it, as opposed to just talking to my editor, my agent, and my sons. I can actually have conversations. But that other award stuff is so far down the line. Like I've gotten so many accolades from New Kid that I could live with that joy for the rest of my life.
I think I probably have congratulated you in the last year about 300 times, which
Yeah.
I love. Like every time I turn around, and then there's points where I can't catch up. I'm like, wait, I got to congratulate you for like 6 different things. It's so amazing. I'm so happy for you. It's incredible.
So I have a question for both of you. Tell us about the first time something you drew was accepted for publication and what that felt like.
Who goes first? Jerry, you go first.
So
I can think.
In a small thing, it was the School of Visual Arts, my college, their newsletter. So that was kind of a big deal because I was, in art school. So I got in, so they must have liked it. And then, you know what? So I did grow up like Jordan Banks in New Kid. I grew up in Washington Heights. And there was a local newspaper in the Washington Heights Inwood section where I lived. And my dad used to bring the paper home all the time. and there's a cartoon in there, and I absolutely hated it. And I used to criticize it all the time. And one day, my dad said, you know, he's in there, you're not. So put up or shut up, basically. So I called up that newspaper, and I asked if I could bring them a comic strip. And for the next 2 weeks, I made a comic strip, and I went up there, and a couple weeks later, it was in. So my dad brought home that paper, and I opened it up, and I said, hey, here's that comic strip I hated. And boom, here's mine. And that was the first printed comic strip in a newspaper.
That's
great.
Story.
It was all to show my dad.
Yeah, right. Well, there's a part, this isn't published, but one of the inspirations of the book was Natalie winning a book award. And I also did, and I did which was, I guess, in my own way, my first graphic novel, because it was an illustrated book in 6th grade, and I won an award for it, and I had to go to Hartford to get my award. But I guess the first published one was high school. I did comics for my high school newspaper and also for my college newspaper. So it's interesting. I think it's funny. I feel like whenever I talk to cartoonists, the answer is kind of the same. Like, we kind of knew who we were and what we wanted to do, even as little kids. It's kind of neat.
Yeah.
See, my parents had always heard the term starving artist. So that's
me too.
why, like Jordan Banks, they did not send me to art school.
Me too.
So I went to Fieldston in Riverdale instead of going to art design, which is where I wanted to go. But by the time I was old to go to college, I insisted that I went to School of Visual Arts, and then that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah, that fall back on thing. But then people don't realize, like, if there's nothing else you want to do with your life, then there's really nothing to fall back on.
Right, exactly.
So that's the first time you had something accepted for publication. So now, what did it feel like when you heard New York Times bestseller attached to your books?
Jerry, you
want to go first on that
one?
Oh,
okay. Well, so that was, this, like I said, it came out in the pandemic, and I was really worried because I had a much different vision for what this year was going to look like, as everybody else did. So my editors and everybody over at Scholastic called me up and they said, you need to get on a Zoom call right now. And I was like, oh no, what's wrong? My first reaction. And they told me, and I actually drew a comic of myself like this. It was like, I could not even believe it. I was out of my mind happy. It was just incredible.
Yeah, it was hard thinking of New York Times bestseller without thinking of Raina Telgemeier, and I would always look, and she'd have like eight of the top 9 books.
Right.
So I was just like, that's Raina's, that's where she belongs. And then I made it, I think, number 4, like that was huge. And then to actually be number 1 this month was just something that, like, see, I still can't put it into words.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So great.
No, it's pretty amazing.
That's great. A question from Christy for both of you. I work at a library and I love to recommend graphic novels, especially books by both of you. If you were to pick your top 3 graphic novels besides your own, what would you recommend to readers?
Wow. Top 3. And this is middle grade. Or so it's specifically younger readers. I guess you would say middle grade, yeah.
You want to alternate? I'll start. Sure. I'll say I think Guts is my favorite Raina book.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I love El Defo by C.C. Bell.
C.C. Bell. American Born Chinese was amazing, and it really showed me what I could accomplish with a graphic novel and how far I could push the envelope. So that's an important one for me.
Okay. I love all of Raina's books, but I'm just going to say Smile just to pick one. They're all wonderful.
Hey Kiddo, Jerry Kruszewska.
Yes. Oh, you took it. Yeah, that's wonderful. Now I'm hitting that blank when anybody asks me what my favorite is, and I do this Jedi mind trick. And Terry's books, Invisible Emmy. Yeah, Terry Liebens's books. Yeah.
Roller Girl, Victoria Jameson. And the Wimpy Kid books, they're technically not graphic novels, but so he was my Jim Davis. So he wrote, because my sons was
Yeah.
completely in love with those. And I never, like my boys would be like, Dad, we have to go to the store on August 8th. And I'm like, oh, like to GameStop to get a new, Sonic or a game? Like, no, Wimpy Kid is coming out. I'm like, wait a minute, you know when a book is coming out? Like, it was, I had never thought of a kid knowing when a book was launching.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so Jeff Kinney has been amazing. He wrote my cover blurb, which I couldn't have asked better.
Which is an excellent. And also I want to add, not a graphic novel, but because we're here, The Dot by Peter Reynolds is one of my favorite books of all time. All time. And that was such an inspiration for me to even want to write my own books. And I love the watercolor. It's such a beautiful, beautiful book. It's one of my favorites.
Absolutely.
We will pass that along.
Yeah, yep. Please.
What about, maybe you could just talk to it. You have a little bit, but the difference between, writing or drawing a comic, progressing to a graphic novel. That's a big leap, or it was a slow progression, or did you just dive in? And, I guess mixed into this question is just, graphic novels have just come so far in the past few years, and they kind of, a few years back, they were kind of considered sort of a lower art form than, and they've sort of really risen a lot. Maybe you could just speak to what you think is behind that, as well. I know I mixed a couple questions in there together, but.
I have to say Amulet by Kazuo Kibuishi. Now all these other ones are coming into my mind.
I know. Whenever someone, 3 a.m, I'll be like, wait. Right.
You're right. There were 5 questions in there, and I had the answers for them all, and now I can't remember any of them. It was so weird that when I was a kid, my teachers used to actually confiscate our comics, because they weren't real reading. Mm. So for that kid to grow up and like win a Newbery, which a lot of people use that to legitimize the format of graphic novels. Yes. Like, someone tweeted to me and said, a dad came in with a son, and the son's like, oh, can I get the graphic novel? It's, oh, that's not real reading. And the bookstore owner was like, graphic novel just won the Newbery Award. He's like, oh, all right, get whatever you want. I was like, wow, I did that.
Thanks to you, Jerry. Thanks to you. It's amazing.
Yes. So great. To Mr. Husberg, who used to steal my comics,
Speaking of separated at birth again, too, in college, I was at a liberal arts school as a fine arts major, and I did a thesis senior year about cartooning, and the head of the art department said cartooning wasn't art. And he's not around anymore, but I would love to go speak to him as well and let him know that, in fact, it is.
So like the good thing to me with being a cartoonist, because I did Mama's Boys for King Features for like 20 years or something like that, is I was so used to panel, joke, panel, joke, so I'm used to putting jokes in. So at least every page of New Kid, I tried to make sure, because I was trained to have something funny in there. Mm-hmm. So there aren't too many like long lapses where there's not something that you can laugh at. And I think that really helped a lot of reluctant readers, because they have said that they laugh so much that they can't wait to see what's on the next page.
That's funny. I get that a lot. I've gotten so much about reluctant readers, but just like you, I feel like each pass when editing, my first thought is, how can I make this funnier?
Right.
That's always sort of how I look at each page. And mine come from a different place, because you had a strip, but my comic is a panel. So I didn't have ongoing characters, but I still had that idea of creating a world in, one scene. So I kind of take that same skill set and use it over and over again, this time with characters who are with storylines and arcs. So, but yeah, it's funny. I never thought about that, Jerry, till you said it, how much the humor has to do with helping reluctant readers stay focused.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I have one more question. This one says, I, like Natalie, was a not so popular kid and drew comics. The thing is, I get discouraged because I'm unsure as how to get started and submit work that may not be so polished. I sketch and I write And I've always wanted to share my story. Do you have any advice how to get started and pursue my true passion?
Which one? What? Who wants to start? Jerry, do you want to start?
We can kind of tag team. One of the
Okay.
things is, not everything has to be polished. I mean,
Yeah.
because if you look at Amulet by Kazu, who is absolutely amazing, and then you look at Wimpy Kid or Dork Diaries, pen and ink. It's so you
Right.
don't have to fit in, like I used to read Kathy, in the newspapers, comic strip, or Dilbert, very simplistic, so you don't have to hold yourself to someone else's standards. What's the one that you just showed me that is hysterical? Something Planet, Strange Planet. Remember, Maria? Strange,
Nathan Pyle. Oh God,
no,
I love it.
Strange Planet or
Yeah,
something like that.
Nathan is the author.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Strange Planet. Yeah, it's very simple. It's two aliens. It's simple but hilarious. The drawings are, but you know what? They're deceptively simple because his expressions are so like little moments are so on it too. And I was going to jump off the evolution. If you ever go back and look at like Peanuts, how Charlie Brown looked, or even Garfield, how they looked in the beginning and how they change over time, there's always going to be an evolution to your art. Yes. So it's like start where you are and then know that you're going to keep going, and you're getting, just by the nature of writing and drawing, the more you write and draw, the better. You're just going to keep getting better and better and better and better.
And see it in print, because even if I gave it away to local papers just to kind of see what it looked like in print, web comics, and then you just kind of build yourself up. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can put stuff on Instagram. You can just start putting stuff out there and building an audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good advice.
I think self-doubt is built in as artists. We all have it. I think it never goes away, but it has a function, and the function is to help us make our stuff better. You just have to not let it stop you. You have to let it inspire you and not let it get in your way. So you can hear the voices like, oh, this is terrible. And it's like, hi, bye, I have work to do, and just keep going.
Yeah.
That's great. So we are closing in on 8 o'clock. We're closing in on the last couple minutes. This has been great. I think it's been such a cool, wonderful conversation. Do either or both of you have any sort of final thoughts or anything that didn't get asked that you wanted to get asked, or?
No, I think my big thing is reminding folks that Class Act comes out on October 6th, and I'm very excited about that. And then I'll be starting the third and final book of the New Kid saga soon, and give me a couple years on that one.
How about you, Maria?
Well, yeah, just that Forget Me Not Enough are out there, and then same thing, I'm working on book 3, so Jerry and I should be on the phone talking and drawing for our social life coming up. Yep. And that's that. I won't be outside very much.
Excellent. And I will remind everyone who is listening that the authors appreciate your support, and the Blue Bunny Bookstore appreciates your support, and you can buy Maria and Jerry's books at bookshop.org/shop/Blue Bunny, or your independent bookstore of choice. And this has been great. And we thank you both for joining us. Maria,
thank you.
Wish you great success with your new book. It's fun to be here right at the beginning.
And it's so cool seeing all 3 behind you right there.
Yeah, it's great.
So wait a minute, we're seeing all 3? What are we seeing?
Behind you.
Oh, the books.
Oh,
our books behind you.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were saying there was a little piece of Natalie 3 behind Maria.
Oh, no.
No.
Sneak peek. I do see a sketch of Nat behind you though, Maria.
Yeah, for one of my drawing demos. So yeah.
So great. So if there's nothing else, then we will say good night and thank you very much. And I know that everybody who has tuned in tonight has appreciated spending this hour with you both. So
thank you.
Thank you. This was great.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Bye, Maria. Thank you, Janet.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Bye, Jerry.
Bye.
Bye.